Uh-oh, my Wi-Fi is fussy. Hi guys, welcome to the first Facebook Live in this summer series. I am so excited that you're joining me. If you are hopping on live, say hello, or say hello if you're watching a replay too, because I do go back and look at all of the comments. So I'm excited that you're here, and I've got some great stuff to share with you tonight in our first, I tried to say first and Facebook at the same time. It didn't come out so well. In our first Facebook Live for the summer. Okay, this is June's calendar, and it's going to be backwards. That's okay. You have it in the Facebook page. But tonight, for our first webinar, I'm talking about 5 quick steps to keeping our mini lessons mini. Hi, Kylie. Great to see you on here. Now, Facebook has some cool new things. Well, let's see, what can I do? Oh, I can't wave at Kylie. I can say hi to Regina too. Hi, Regina, welcome. I don't know what happened, but I used to be able to do something cool and now I can't. That's okay. All right, so tonight, our topic is all about keeping mini lessons mini. If you are like me in the past, when I was doing mini lessons with my students, I could never keep them super mini. I always wanted to have them be about 10 minutes, maybe 12 minutes long, and they always turned into like these 20-minute mega lessons. And I started really reflecting on what I was doing as a teacher and why I was taking up so much time. I didn't want them to be that long because I wanted the kids to have as much time reading independently and working on reading that they could. So I was trying to find out, how can I shave off some of this time? So I came up with some ideas and I tried working on them, and I found success in keeping my mini lessons actually really short. So I'm going to share with you some things that I did, and tonight we're going to go over some of them, and then I have some questions here. People in my curriculum group asked me a bunch of questions, and I have these little cards. So I'm going to answer 6 questions tonight, and I have my answers on the back. I don't know if you can see that. There they are. And then throughout the Facebook Live summer series, I have all of these questions from my curriculum group. Look at this. All of these questions that I printed out that they asked me. So I'm going to be going over all kinds of fun questions throughout the summer series too. So tonight, I love that you're all saying hello. Keep saying hello. I love it, love it. Hi, Christina. Hi, Amber. Hi, Nicole. Hi, Barbara. Tonight, we're going to talk about mini lessons. Hi, Lorraine. I'm glad you're on. So the first thing that I started looking at about myself as a teacher and how I could shave this time off of these mini lessons that weren't so many is I started thinking about, what is my focus area for my mini lesson? I started really looking at the topic that I was covering, and was it, appropriate? How was this going? So I decided I was going to really pick a focus topic. And that was my first step. Pick something that I could really focus in on. So if I knew the kids were struggling with summarizing, which my kids were always struggling with summarizing, then I would just focus in on summarizing. And I made sure, I told myself, don't get distracted, stay focused on your topic for your mini lesson. Letting the kids get us distracted can eat up a good 5 minutes right there. So that was step 1. Once I had my focus down, so say for example, it was summarizing. The second thing I did was I thought about, okay, summarizing is a huge topic. I need to narrow my focus down, because if I sat down with my class in a mini lesson and I just talked about summarizing, that lesson is going to go 1,000 different ways, because we can talk about, well, what's the main idea? What's your topic sentence in a summary? Are you going to add your opinion in a summary? Are you going to add details? Which details should you add? Should you copy? Should you make up your own words? You can see how it can get really out of control really fast. And the whole point of a mini lesson is to keep it nice and tight and small. So I decided I needed to narrow my focuses down. If my mini lesson was going 20 minutes long, one of 2 things was probably happening. I was letting the kids distract me, get me off topic, because I thought, hey, these are teachable moments. Like, the kids are bringing this up. This is something I should cover. But what I wasn't realizing is it wasn't something I needed to cover right then and there. I could make a little note about it and talk about it in a different lesson, but I needed to stay focused. So that was my number 1 thing. And then my second thing was, my lessons were too broad. They were too general in nature. So I needed to narrow it down. And because my lessons were too broad, we weren't really mastering anything, because we were kind of like a ping pong table all over the board. So I needed to get it narrowed down so that we could focus on just one angle and then master that. So for example, if I decided my focus was going to be summarizing, what was my narrowed down angle about summarizing going to be? Was it going to be how to find a topic sentence for a summary? Was it going to be thinking about the length of a summary, what's appropriate? Was it going to be forming opinions about summaries? What was it going to be? And so then I narrowed my focus down. That's step 2. Step 3 then was I needed to make sure that I modeled the lesson for the kids first. So I had to model a couple of activities. So a lot of times what I do in my mini lessons is I use mentor text. So books that we've already read together in a read aloud, in an interactive read aloud, I pull those back up and I use those as my examples. So if we're talking about summarizing, I have my topic, I have my narrowed down focus, which might be finding our topic sentence for our summary. That might be what all we're talking about in that mini lesson. And so I'll pull out my mentor text and I'll have that all ready to go. And then I model for the class. What could be one of my topic sentences or one of my main sentences? What could be an idea? And I'll write that on the anchor chart. And then I'll have the kids help me think about what could be another topic sentence that we might have. And we can write different ideas for what our main sentence for our summary would be. And we're just exclusively focusing in on that. And I always scaffold the learning in my mini lessons from me modeling and inviting the students to learn with me and help me. That's the second step. And then having every student turn and talk with a partner about another possible topic sentence in this example for summaries. So my scaffolding in my mini lesson goes from me modeling, the students inviting them to learn with me by raising their hands, and then getting everyone actively involved with a turn and talk. They turn and talk with a partner. This is a great time for me to look around the room and see who's really getting what we're talking about here and who is completely clueless. Who might I need to pull really quickly into a strategy group after our lesson is over? Who might I need to go see in a conference right away after our lesson is over because I don't think they're going to be able to transition into independent time very easily here. So that turn and talk is a really great opportunity not only to get them all actively learning, but it's also a great time for me to just observe. Sometimes just stopping and observing our students is a really powerful thing to do. Just stop and watch them for 5 minutes. What are their eyes doing? What is their body language telling you? What can you notice about them? Just like try and pause your brain and just observe. It can be a really, really powerful thing. I think sometimes as teachers, we're going so fast with so many things, we never really just stop, take a step back and watch what's going on. So that's a great time to do that during that turn and talk. And when I keep those 3 steps in my mini lesson down to a science like that, then I can keep my mini lesson down to 10 or 12 minutes. So some things I do ahead of time too is I write the mini lesson on my anchor chart. Now you might use a Promethean board. I'm old school. I like the dry or the paper, the sticky anchor chart paper, because it really helps me keep the learning up all day. The kids can see it all day. We can keep it up all week. I always auction off my anchor charts at the end of the week, and kids love to take them home. I don't know why, but they love it. So I will keep it on a chart paper. Now, to save 5 minutes in my mini lesson, I will write the mini lesson ahead of time before I start my lesson that day. And I'll also write my first example. Remember how I said I always model? I'll write that down. So for example, in the example I was talking about was summarizing. I'll have already written down what topic sentence I think would be a good one for that mentor text. So I have my mentor text chosen. It's right next to me in the lesson. And I have my first example written on the anchor chart modeled. Now, I always cover it up. So when we start the lesson and I bring all the kids over to this circle or wherever we are, they have their notebooks, I have my example covered up with another piece of sticky paper so they don't see it. All they see is the mini lesson statement. But when I get into the lesson and I start modeling my first example, I just unveil that and it saves me 5 minutes because they don't need to sit and watch me write my example on the anchor chart. I can just talk through it with them as an example, and that's a good 5 minutes in your lesson shaved off right there. So just doing a little bit of prep work ahead of time is huge. Be thinking about what's the topic, and then what are you going to narrow that down to? What angle are you going to go with that topic? Write it on your anchor chart. Write your example on the anchor chart, just cover it up, and then you literally have shaved off like 5 or 10 minutes. And just remember in your mini lesson to make sure you stay on topic. I know there are so many opportunities for teachable moments, and your kids might come up with some really great things. What I love about mini lessons and what I love about workshop format is the kids are actively learning right along with you. I learn more from my kids, I swear, than they do from me, because they're such great, brilliant thinkers, and giving them this space and opportunity to share their thinking and have everybody actively involved is great. But you, as a teacher, are going to be guiding them to staying focused. So you have to stay focused too. Make notes, have a little clipboard, take some notes about what topics you think would be great for them to talk about in another mini lesson, but keep it on your angled down topic and keep it nice and tight. And that will make your mini lesson 10 minutes, 12 minutes long, and then you can transition them into their independent work time. It's awesome. So those are my tips for you today on how to keep that mini lesson nice and mini. Yes, the prep is a great time saver, Connie. I love it. Emily said she didn't realize that I had started. That's okay. The great thing about Facebook Live is you can watch this as a replay, and you can fast forward through all my rambling to the part you just want to watch too. So that's what's nice. All of these Facebook Lives are going to be available forever. If you actually wanted to, you could go into the video section of my Facebook page and watch the first summer, the whole series of the first summer series. And you can watch last year. This is my 3rd year that I'm doing Facebook Live summer series. I love them. They're very fun. Okay, here's my questions that I'm answering. This one is from Melissa Cheney. And Melissa asked, how do I effectively run reading center small groups so that the kids I'm not with actually stay on task? My 2nd graders tend to get off task quite easily. Isn't that a great question? I love this question from Melissa. So she's asking, how do you effectively run your centers without your kids getting off task? And I have 4 little tips on the back here that I wrote. The first one is, when I was teaching 3rd grade, I don't know if y'all use the Daily 5 as a management system, but it was awesome for me. Let me know in the comments if you use Daily 5 at all. Now, Daily 5 is not a curriculum. That's not something that you're using to actually instruct with the students. The Daily 5 is a management system. So it really helps you get all your routines down pat, and it's really helpful, and you can modify it too. There were some years I just did the Daily 3, but there's all kinds of, like, I like to call it like these tiny little things that make a huge difference, like the doorbell. Having a doorbell in your classroom, and that's like a battery operated little doorbell, it was like game changer. I love those little things that are game changers. They're so, so awesome. So look into the Daily 5, Melissa. Another thing I would say is, at the beginning of the year, don't focus so much on comprehension heavy mini lessons. Focus on management mini lessons. So there's different types of mini lessons that you can do in your workshop. One of them is management lessons. And the management lessons that I would do are just basically things that are going to set up the structures in your classroom to run smoothly. Even if you have to spend 2, 3, 4 weeks at the beginning of the year setting up these management and strategies together, it's worth it, because it'll make your whole rest of your year run so smooth. So I would say model, model, model. How to use the classroom library, model it. What are your procedures for everything? Make an anchor chart for procedures for things. How are you going to transition? What are the expectations of how your hands are going to be, your feet are going to be, everything that's going on. So you want to model everything and do some management lessons at the beginning of the year. And I also really like the fishbowl strategy. Do any of y'all use the fishbowl strategy? It's kind of one of my favorites. So while I'm doing these management lessons at the beginning of the year, I'll have 2 kids sit in the middle of a circle. So we'll all be in a circle, and then I'll have 2 kids sit in the middle as partners. And what they're going to do is they're going to practice whatever that procedure is that we're working on. So if we're talking about how it's going to look when we're partner reading, I'll have 2 kids in the middle of our class circle, and they'll practice, they'll kind of model for us what it looks like to partner read. So we do this fishbowl. So anytime you're doing management lessons, you can use the fishbowl. One strategy, and I think I got this from the Daily 5. It's been years, I don't remember, but it might have come from there, is if you have some ADD or ADHD or class clown type of kids in your class, put them in the fishbowl and tell them to do it all wrong. Just be like, okay, I want you to do this so badly that we are all just like, this is not good. And you have them get all their silliness out, and then the class talks about, okay, what are all the things that they did that, weren't the right way? And then we joke and we make a big deal out of it. And then I say, okay, now I want you to try this the right way. I want you to do it as best as you can, like model citizen. Our principal's walking in, what's going to happen? And then they go ahead and they do whatever it is, if it's partner reading or whatever, whisper reading, however you're going to have, whatever the activity is, they do it perfectly. And then the whole class critiques, okay, how did it go? How did they do? And then you can say to them, wow, you know what, Jonah, I'm just using that because it's my son's name. You know what, Jonah? You did an awesome job. You just showed me that you know exactly what to do when you're reading with your partner. So now my expectation is to see you do that every single time. And I know you can because you're amazing. And so you do that, and then you let them show them the wrong way, and then you do it the right way, and they are like, okay, yeah, I can do this. And then they're held accountable. Every time you're like, Jonah, man, you were in that fishbowl, Another thing you can do with the fishbowl is afterwards, after they model whatever it is, then you have a couple kids with a clipboard that are going to be evaluating them. So everyone has a conversation afterwards about how the fishbowl did, but you have a couple kids with like checklists, and they actually like review how they did in the fishbowl, and they absolutely love this. And it takes them ownership over their classroom, takes ownership, gives ownership to them over their learning and over what the expectations are for their classroom community. It's not just you as the teacher making the rules, they're discovering the procedures that they're going to do together, and they own it then, and then they want to make it like the best classroom that it can be. So that's a long answer, but I love it. Okay, next question. Emily Homan asked, how do you make time to answer questions and have discussions during small group guided reading and have time to actually read or work with words in a short period of time? If I want to meet with all of my groups in my hour block, I can only spend about 12 to 15 minutes on each group and have such a hard time with this. Yes, and again, teachers, our biggest enemy is time, isn't it? So what I have for Emily for an answer here is, first of all, I don't think that you need to see every group of guided reading every day. You definitely want to see your lowest readers every day, but if you've got kids who are advanced, you can set them up to do different things aside from being with you. So you can set them up through modeling to do literature circles together. So they're still meeting in a small group, but they don't need to be with you. So you can get really creative that way. And then one thing that I do in guided reading to have the kid, to make the lesson go a little bit quicker, is after we do our reading, we'll have an open-ended conversation. The kids usually have something written on a Post-it note, and then we'll have a little conversation. But to save time there, if I have 6 kids at my guided reading table, I'll have them talk with just a partner at the guided reading table about what they put on their Post-it note, what they're thinking after reading. Immediately, tell me what you're thinking after you're done reading. I like to keep it open-ended because I want to find out what my students are thinking after reading instead of asking them a specific question. So I say, well, tell me what you're thinking, tell me what you're wondering, and talk to a partner. And that way, everybody gets a chance to share in just 5 minutes. I give them 1 or 2 minutes to talk with a partner, and I'm literally right there. So I can redirect something, or if they're stuck, I can kind of guide that partnership in a conversation. But it's like 3 mini conversations going on at once, which gives you 3 times the amount of opportunities for conversations in your guided reading group then. So like 1 or 2 minutes, they talk with a partner, and then we spend the next 3 minutes together as our little group talking about what we shared with our partners. So that's a great way to shave some time off of your guided reading lesson there too. Also, I don't know if you use passages or shorter things during guided reading, but I love I have a reading intervention program, and I love using those passages during guided reading because they're appropriate for the reading levels and they're short. So instead of having the kids spend 10 minutes reading, I can have them spend 4 minutes reading. And then that gives us more time for conversation because what they're reading is at their instructional level, and I give them the introduction and all that good stuff. But then we don't have to spend as much time reading, and we can finish an entire story or an entire nonfiction piece, even at the upper levels. A lot of times with guided reading at the upper levels, like 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, we're always reading chapter books, so it feels like we're in the same book forever and we can only read a little bit. But with a passage, we can get stuff done like in one day, 4 minutes of reading, and then we can have a longer conversation. So look into any type of shorter text that you can find is really helpful too. And word work is always optional in guided reading, so that could be something that you could shave off or do in an additional day. Like you could stretch a guided reading lesson out into 2 days. You could send them back with an assignment too. Instead of having them do it at the guided reading table, you could have them do that as an assignment that you'll go over when you meet next time too. So those are my answers to help you with that one. Okay, this one's from, I'm going to say her name wrong, Melina Smith. She said, we divide our 30-minute groups into 2 15-minute sessions. How do you recommend dividing up a guided reading lesson to fit those 15-minute blocks? This is a great question. And of course, there's no one right answer to this. I always say teaching is like a GPS where it's like recalculating, right? Recalculating. So it depends on the kids. It depends on their needs. It depends on what you're working on. But something that I might do just as an answer to this is I always start my guided reading with an introduction because I'm working with kids at their instructional level. So it doesn't matter if they're advanced readers. It doesn't matter if they're 4 years below grade level. They're going to need an introduction because they're reading at an instructional level, which is 90 to 95% accuracy. So I start with a 2 to 3 minute introduction that I plan ahead. And then you can start, if you want to break this up into 2 days, you might get a little creative here. And I don't know, you try this out. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, you recalculate. But maybe try after your introduction, before you start reading, try doing like a 5-minute open-ended kind of conversation, like doing some predicting. What do you think is going to happen in this story? Tell me why. Tell me more. What are you thinking just by looking at the cover? What are you noticing? Talking about things like that. And then spend a little bit of time on some word work. You can have the kids then read this text on their own and come back to you. And then the second time you meet, you can do a review like for 5 minutes and some open-ended conversation, and then focus in on a specific skill. Do like a 5-minute focus, and then do maybe a wrap up with some teachable moment type of things that they come up with you too. So that might be a way to break it up. It's just something you can try. I always say teachers are the best resource in the classroom, and I love being creative and I love trying different things with my kids. Some things work, some things don't, but it's always worth trying. So go with your gut on that one and just get creative with it. Okay, next question is from Christine Olson. Christine says, I have a student in 2nd grade who hates reading aloud. I asked her what happens when she's asked to read, and she said, I feel like I've been bonked in the head really hard. Oh, now that's some anxiety. What have you done to make your struggling readers feel safe and unafraid? What are your best confidence builders? Thank you. I love this question. So one thing that I really work hard on when I'm not in the classroom now, but when I really worked hard on building a classroom community where everyone felt respected and that they could share how they were really thinking. So that's number one, is building that classroom community, giving the kids the autonomy, giving them the position of feeling like they can teach each other. You're not the only person with the knowledge in the room. All of the kids have so much value to offer to each other. So that's a big thing. But what you could do with this student individually is I would say if you have her reading aloud, I would prep her ahead of time. I would let her know what you want her to read, maybe go over it with her, do a little shared reading with her first, so that when she does speak up in the classroom, she's got that confidence. It's not like she's being called on the fly. So I wouldn't do anything on the fly with her because clearly she does have that anxiety and you don't want her to feel that way. I would do, like I said, a quick share read before reading with her. So do a shared read together and then have her read aloud. Also, you could pair her up with a student who's really empathetic and kind and work with them together. Celebrate any small gains you can with her. Kids who are struggling with reading and they have a low self-esteem and confidence, man, I celebrate the silliest little things with those kids. I celebrate anything with them. Like, look at what you did here. You made this step up here. This is a huge leap for you. I'm so proud of you. I'm so excited for you. Another thing I do is I address the students as readers. So when we're in reading workshop, I call them readers because some kids don't feel like they're readers because they're struggling so much. And I don't want them to not feel like readers. They are readers in the classroom. So when we're in writing, I address my students as writers. They are all equally important with something valuable to add to this world. And so I'll say that you are writers, you are readers. So start addressing them in that way, and that will really help too. Okay, 2 more questions. This is fun. Kayla Cannon said, how do you help change the mindset of teachers? Ooh, this is a good one. How do you help change the mindset of teachers to adopt a guided reading or reading writing workshop model instead of what they've been doing for years? Man, change is hard. I get it. I totally know. And it can be really, really overwhelming and scary to change and to adjust to a totally new teaching style. You might have been using a basal reading series for 25 years and someone comes in and tells you got to do a workshop. What the what? What is that, right? So I get that. For me, my best advice, I was a literacy coach in many schools in the past, and my best advice is to be patient and to model what you expect the teachers to do. Also, really just focus on one element at a time. You cannot expect teachers to go from a basal reading program to being professional expert writing workshop, in, differentiated spelling, vocabulary, all of that in 1 year. It's not going to happen. So I would say to focus on one element of something first. So say guided reading. If your focus for the year is on guided reading, I say that's still too big. That's still too big and overwhelming. So focus on just one element of guided reading. Say the introduction. Okay, this year, teachers, we're going to get really good at making our introductions. And I'll tell you, if you just focus it down on something that's bite-sized, teachers are already stressed enough. They don't need to feel like they have to be perfect at an entire subject in 1 year. So just focus it down on one little thing, and then they'll get there. So focus on just the introductions of guided reading. Get really good at that. I would also say, in my experience, pick the most willing teacher in your building and work with that teacher first. Build that teacher up, and then the next teacher, and then the next teacher, like that. Something you can do too if you're doing professional development is to kind of just go over rationale. Why are we making these changes? Sometimes teachers are told to do different things and they're not told why. And they're not given the opportunity to ask questions and to understand why we're doing all these different things. So give that space to them, just like we do with our students when we ask them to do things. Make sure they understand the reasons why and the rationale behind it and have a voice in that too. So those are my big pieces of advice for that question. Kind of a literacy coach related type question there. The last one is from Danette Macon, and she said, do you have students reading independently as you pull strategy groups, or are they working in centers? Also, how to best help kids make progress in reading when they are far below grade level, reading at a kindergarten level in 4th grade due to disabilities. So she had kind of a loaded question, but I think I can answer it. So during their independent reading time, you can do lots of different things. And trust me, I've done pretty much all of these, all kinds of different things. What I love the most and what I do believe in strongly is that during that time, kids should be allowed to read books independently that they've chosen, that they're interested in, that they're motivated to learn, that they get to pick, that aren't based on a reading level, that aren't based on a number or a color in the library or anything like that. They're based on their interests, and you teach them how to pick the right books, right? And we talk about that, but they get the autonomy to pick what they want to read, and they get to have time reading. That's a huge thing for me. So I want my kids to spend time reading. Now, my kids don't normally, they spend time reading during the workshop, but they also get other opportunities to read silently as well. At the beginning of the year, I started this new thing when I was teaching 3rd grade where we had the first 15 minutes of the day, they got to read any book they wanted, anytime they wanted, or any book they wanted for 15 minutes. And I made this a huge deal. I was like, y'all, we get to do something nobody else gets to do. I made it like they got to go to some big party. And they were so excited. They were like, we get to read whatever we want? Like for this whole 15 minutes? I'm like, yes, whatever you want. And then I just did reading conferences with kids one-on-one during that time. But they thought it was the coolest thing ever because I made them think that. I manipulated them a little bit, but they were really excited about it, so it was fine. Sometimes manipulation can work, but they have to spend time. We want to develop lifelong readers. We want them to develop a lifelong love of reading. So we can't do that by picking books for them or telling them you can only pick red books or yellow books. We have to give them the autonomy to pick the books that really they fall in love with. And of of course we can guide them to choosing different genres down the road and all that good stuff too. But that's my number one thing. And then, so during that time, they're reading independently. They might be reading with a partner. They may be listening to books on tape. So they're engaged in some type of reading. They're also going to be responding to their reading for maybe 5 minutes in written form. This is just my way of kind of seeing how they're responding, what they're thinking, what they're doing. So they could be responding in a notebook, on a graphic organizer, on a little think mark. And then at the end of the workshop, when we have our share, we all come together and we kind of share what we wrote down that 5 minutes. I would say with the kids who are in kindergarten level at a 4th grade, you absolutely, as hard as it is, you absolutely have to meet them at their instructional levels. You cannot expect the kids to come up to a 4th grade ability level just because that's what the book says they have to do. We can't do that. We're just going to widen the gap. And when they get to 5th grade, they're still going to be at a kindergarten reading level. So we have to find out where they're at. We have to meet them at their ability level. So that mini lesson you do with the whole class is their grade appropriate instruction. And then inside of that, during the independent time, while you're pulling groups and doing interventions or whatever you're doing, that's when you'll meet them at their instructional level. So they're still getting grade appropriate content. And because they don't have to actually do any decoding during the whole group lesson or any reading on their own, they can fully focus on the comprehension. Then they don't have to really worry about that decoding element. You know, kids that are really far behind, oftentimes it's because of basic things, like they can't decode and they can't put words together, but they can comprehend. We all have a certain amount of brain power that we use when we read, and kids who are struggling, unfortunately, have to spend a lot of that brain power decoding words, thinking about how they sound, what does that sound mean, what is that E at the end of the word supposed to make me do again, I can't remember. So when something is read to them, they can focus all of that brain power. They have the same amount of brain power, but they can focus it all on comprehension then. So during that whole group mini lesson, they get to focus all their brain power on the actual comprehension and meat of the lesson. Then when they're reading on their own, you're meeting them at their ability levels there. So when possible, take away the need for them to have to decode. When you're working on grade level stuff with them, take away the need for them to have to decode. Read it first to them, then have them read it back to you. Do some choral reading, some echo reading, do some stuff where they don't have to necessarily focus so much on the decoding and can attend to the meaning of the text is really important for that grade level stuff, because they do still need grade level stuff. But so take away that decoding for that kind of stuff. That's what I would say for that one. I know y'all have been making lots of comments and I tried to stay focused, but I'm going to totally go back and read all of your comments. If you want to know more about guided reading, I actually am doing a live webinar on Wednesday. Yes, on Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. And it's going to be on guided reading. I'm going to go over all of the steps that I do in guided reading. This is for any grade guided reading level. You can go to jenbengalwebinars.com. It's free to register for. I'm doing that on guided reading. I'm doing one on Thursday in the morning on how to write mini lessons. I'm going to show you how I write mini lessons in 7 steps. I'm going to give you free resources for all 7 steps so you can write your own mini lessons. You can register for all of these at jenbengalwebinars.com, which is really cool. And then on Saturday, I'm going to talk about the intervention program. I'm going to show you 12 different ways that people are using the intervention program. If you are interested in an intervention program, I do have one for every ability level, A to Z. I use Fountas and Pinnell. I was trained with Irene Fountas in Boston. That's where I got my postgraduate degree. So I have all of that foundation. You can go to, there's like a million ways to get to the intervention program. You can go to readinginterventions.com, readingintervention.com. You can go to jenbengal.com and you'll see it there. There's lots of ways to get there. So you can check those out. And yes, come to my webinars. They're free for live and they're a little more formal. You have to register and you'll get an email with a link, and that link is what you'll sign into the webinar for. So if you register and you don't see the email, it might have went to your junk folder, or try a different email to register for it. Hi, Connie. I love that you're in here. Your comments earlier today were so sweet. Thank you. Okay, so tomorrow I'm going to be live 8 o'clock tomorrow night, same time. And I'm going to go over a reading conference. So what I would do in a reading conference, how I use reading conferences, I love them, and what I talk about in a reading conference with my kids. So that is what I'm talking about tomorrow night. And tonight, I think I'm done. So, and I'm gonna pick, more of these questions, and I'll scan through your questions tonight too, and see what we've all got going on. I'm excited that it's summer. It's downpouring outside right now. It's downpouring right now. I can hear it. I'm gonna lose Wi-Fi anyways. Okay, JenBengalWebinars.com. Tomorrow night, same spot for Facebook Live. Can't wait to see you back. We're going to talk about reading conferences. It's going to be awesome. You can watch this replay, and I will see you again tomorrow night. Bye, guys. Have a great night.